Throughout this week, we've had a number of ever-shifting explanations as to why Donald Trump abruptly fired the head of the FBI without having any replacement lined up. There's been a lot of debate, a lot of back and forth on the right and on the left. Is it the investigation? Is it Hillary Clinton? Was it Rosenstein? We're done with that as of yesterday, okay? We've got two videos for you, two pieces of evidence that make it undeniable that they fired him to try to shut down the investigation. In this first, you're gonna see Sarah Huckabee Sanders standing in for Sean Spicer, who was off in a bush at the time, and listen to how she explains their reasoning.
That the president has encouraged this investigation into Russia. He wants to see it reach its completion sooner rather than later. How has he encouraged it if he just fired the man who was overseeing the Russia investigation?
There are multiple people that are part of this, and it's not just the FBI. You've got the House committee, the Senate committee. Look, again, the point is, we want this to come to its conclusion. We want it to come to its conclusion with integrity. And we think that we've actually, by removing Director Comey, taken steps to make that happen.
So
that's pretty straightforward.
Yeah, if they want the Russian investigation to come to a conclusion, and by firing Comey, they have helped to make that happen.
Or they think they have.
Right, yeah. Well, so that is their statement saying, yeah, we fired him because of the Russian investigation. It was clear as day. But if you don't believe their spokesperson, don't worry, the president's gonna weigh in.
Yeah, after all, I mean, Trump says, he said today actually on Twitter that you can't expect his people to go out there and to speak accurately. So maybe they're misinterpreting what he was thinking about while considering firing Comey. Let's go to Trump.
In his defense, the quickest way to end an investigation is fire the investigator.
Exactly.
Well,
I mean, if you want to end it, get rid of that guy.
Yeah.
See, I hadn't thought of that. Good point. Well, apparently that's exactly what he was thinking.
He's a showboat. He's a grandstander. The FBI has been in turmoil. You know that. I know that. Everybody knows that. What I did is I was going to fire Comey. My decision. It was not.
You had made the decision before they came in.
I was going to fire Comey. There's no good time to do it, by the way.
Because in your letter you said I accepted their recommendation.
Yeah, well,
so you had already made the decision.
I was going to fire regardless of recommendation.
So there was.
And in fact, when I decided to just do it, I said to myself, I said, you know, this Russia thing with Trump and Russia is a made-up story. It's an excuse by the Democrats for having lost an election that they should have won.
There's a lot there,
He said
man.
when thinking about firing him, he thought, you know, this Russia thing, don't like it.
Yeah, to be more accurate, this Russia thing.
Yeah.
I thought, you know, this Russia thing. Okay, you schmuck of all schmucks. What did I tell you guys? He's too stupid to carry out any conspiracy. So you're not supposed to admit that you fired the guy investigating you because he was investigating you. But he's too stupid to realize that. So he comes out on national television and says, you know, no, it was me. It was me. I mean, all that thing that we pretended about how it was the Attorney General, the Deputy Attorney General, and we're just kidding.
The statement that I released.
Yeah, right. That said in my letter, because I'm of the Attorney General and Deputy Attorney General's recommendation, I'm doing this. Well, I was lying at the time. I had already made up my mind. And remember how they talked about they did it because of what he did with Hillary Clinton? Nah, it's the Russia thing. Yeah. Right?
You gotta give him credit though. I mean, he held together for almost 48 hours before he revealed everything.
The day before, I believe Sarah Huckabee Sanders, I'm sorry that she doesn't have her dad's sense of humor. He's hilarious. But she said the day before, all Rosenstein. Those words, I believe. Either all Rosenstein or all Deputy Attorney General.
Well, the other great thing he said in that statement is the election the Democrats should have won.
That's right.
I mean, that is actually a big thing to say after you won and you became president. You're like, well, this never should have happened. I don't know what. Listen, I hadn't had any plans on how to do this job. You guys threw me in here. You know?
If you looked at the resume of the girl I beat, she was really qualified to do this job, man.
And also just one other thing that he fit in there, because he has to keep saying it. It's going to come up more in the Lester Holt interview if we show some more of that. He says, you know, that it's just an excuse, and he's right to some extent. There are Democrats trying to use it as an excuse, but you know, the entire thing is not dependent on whether Debbie Wasserman Schultz decides to take up a talking point and go with it. As I've tried to point out, and anybody who uses what Trump said there, if they believe that and think that that accurately describes what actually happened over the course of the past few years, it is completely unaware of the actual timeline, because British intelligence alerted the FBI into suspicious contact between intelligence operatives in Russia and Trump associates in 2015. And I don't think the Brits did that because they thought 2 years later the Democrats might lose an election. It was not an excuse, okay, for 2 years leading up to it. So that is a complete lie if anyone is still spreading that.
Yeah, no, I think Trump's done. And so here are the reasons why. One, you can't admit in the middle of an investigation of your ties to Russia that you fired the investigator because you were worried about what he would uncover. That's crazy. That's an admission of guilt.
Right, but
and by the way, you know why he thinks that way? Because he did do it. He did do it. Right now they're talking about how the investigation has picked up steam inside the FBI and they're uncovering more ties between Russia and Trump. Why do you think he's so panicked about it? Why do you think out of the blue he fired Comey in a panic? Because he knows he did it. If you didn't do it, would you fire Comey and then go, nah, I fired him for the Russian investigation? If you didn't do it, why would you do that? Why would you be like, investigate away, you schmuck? It's gonna be great.
They might be so used to lying that the truth caught them off guard. You know what I mean? When they had the script down there and they were like, hey, this one sounds good. Whoa, that's true? You know, I mean, they just make it up. Like starting with the Hillary email thing, that was so ridiculous. You have to wonder what meeting did they have where they said, this is the story we're gonna go with, right? Because everyone knew that was a lie. I mean, if part of being a con man, and any con man will tell you, is you have to have an element of truth in the story to make people want to believe it. So, and that story was so utterly ridiculous. And you know, I don't know where these stories are coming from, but I really think they just kind of make it up every morning.
Well, let me just, you know, I've read this line and it's worth repeating. I mean, he is surrounded by a nice combination of sycophants and incompetence. Like there is literally no one in that group who says, hey, you can't say that you did it to protect Hillary. Everyone heard you throughout the campaign. Lock her up, lock her up. That's not, there is no one there making these arguments. So that goes to I've said before, Trump has a special political magic. That's what got him elected. He's got a thing. There's no question he's got a thing. But it doesn't mean there are going to be moments, and this is it, this is to your point, when some traditional political acumen is necessary to do this job, and they have none of that. And his magic won't work on everything, and it didn't work here. But he's got no one, literally no one. I mean, to be honest, he could use Dick Morris, you know, like Earth's worst person, but he would help.
Dick Cheney, he could use any Dick. Okay, so look, nobody in his administration said, hey, if you fire the guy investigating you, that might cause you some political trouble. Even if it's not, even if you didn't do anything wrong, it's gonna seem like you did something wrong. No one told him that. When he fired him, he thought it was gonna be a win-win. He was genuinely surprised that Chuck Schumer said it was gonna be a mistake. He's like, what, I thought you'd be happy. Yeah. You thought the leader of the opposition party would be happy that you fired the guy investigating you? So he is clinically dumb. Everyone around him is a sycophant and can't tell him, hey, schmuck, don't do that. Yeah. That's a really bad idea, schmuck. Because if you told him that, he'd immediately fire you. So his ego and his hubris combined with his maniacal stupidity, and by the way, also the fact that he's a pathological liar, guarantees he's not gonna make it through his first term. Because once you start lying to investigators, that's something called perjury. Yeah. And he's not capable of not committing perjury.
Or obstruction of justice.
Right, and there's obstruction of justice when you fire the prosecutor investigating you, and you just admitted to obstruction of justice on national TV, you schmuck.
I think.
Okay, and then if they ever get him in a room and they're asking him questions under oath, he will contradict himself 12 times within 8 minutes. No, within 8 seconds. He just, in that interview, he said, oh, you know, I wanted the investigation to end. And then later in the interview, he's like, maybe I'll lengthen it. He can't help himself. Even his friends say he's a pathological liar. They like him, but that's who he is. So he's gonna commit perjury. He already committed obstruction of justice, let alone the fact that he actually did the Russian deal. That's why he fired the guy.
Trump getting questioned is great because one of the beauties, since the Republicans were so loathsome in the 90s when going after a president who had been left alone, would have been, I think, fairly unpopular across the board, right? But when Bill Clinton went in there to testify before Ken Starr to be deposed, that was he'd been prepped by Vernon Jordan. That was Bill Clinton and Vernon Jordan putting their sort of intellectual capabilities together. Donald Trump, it'll be like the movies. Like they'll trick him. They'll be like, no, we'll get him. Just like in every movie and TV show, your whole strategy is, I'm going to get him to admit it.
Yeah.
And he'll do it.
He'll do it.
He'll. You're goddamn right. I ordered the code red.
Yeah. Young Turks membership creates independent media.
Believe me.
No ads.
Believe me.
All the shows.
Believe me.
On demand.
Believe me.
Support independent media.
Believe me.
It's awesome, tremendous. You'll love it.
Believe me.
And by the end, you'll be thinking,
I'm like a smart person.
tytnetwork.com/join.